Welcome, everyone. What a wonderful morning and a great turnout in a beautiful venue.
The last 2 years have been phenomenal for RDAR. The ability to come from a standing start to supporting a significant number of research initiatives in the province has been really remarkable. You can see with the graph we've got here that in the last year, RDAR has actually initiated more projects than in the previous 3 years. So 154 projects initiated, new projects initiated this year. Really a good opportunity for us to take not only research in the laboratory and fund research in the laboratory, but as in that video that you saw at the start, let's take this opportunity today. Let's hear from producers. Let's hear from industry. Let's hear from the media in terms of how we can drive opportunity for this province.
I think today there's real opportunities in food processing and exports to Asia. We don't have to invent everything from scratch. Much of this we can build on what's been developed in other parts of the world, but we can also lead the world by building on our advanced research capabilities.
This is really where we get the opportunity to tap into the collisions and the brain power in this room itself. And again, I'd like to thank the HAL for starting to bring some of the key messages to us. And I've had the pleasure and the privilege of working across several of Alberta's industries, including energy, including agriculture, IT, finance. And so I'm a passionate Albertan, and I'm passionate about the strengths that Western Canada and Alberta can bring to the rest of the country. And with that, we want to be able to tap into the collective wisdom in this group to really have a collision of ideas based on your backgrounds, based on where you've come from, and share how we can best amplify all our voices to start making a difference both for agriculture and for Alberta as a whole.
So this is a new initiative for Alberta, and it brings us into the national discussion that's been happening across Canada. And some research that came out of the University of Guelph showed that Alberta farmers are actually at a higher level of anxiety and depression than the general population.
The underlying themes kept coming back to the people that have come here, the people who have made this work, the early pioneers in the irrigation sector, those early cattlemen and women, and the infrastructure that's built to support agriculture in this province is what's unique to this province, and we need to build off of those strengths.
This comment was around EESG, economic, environmental, social governance. Alberta has the potential to hit the mark, the top mark on all of those.
It becomes very challenging to interact with different people who do different things every day because you don't brush up against those groups or those people. Within the structure of these groups needs to be built a reason, a purpose, and a habit of having these groups interact in some level.
And its current goal, the net zero by 2050, means that we as a country across all sectors need to come together and achieve more in the next 10 years than we have in the last 30 years. There is a tremendous opportunity for the ag sector here. The ag sector has the ability to impact the carbon footprint from two different directions, both emissions reduction and carbon sequestration. The other opportunity is that practices that increase productivity of food production and practices that increase sustainability of food production are not mutually exclusive. We don't have to pick one over the other.
And I think we all in this room recognize that research is usually incremental and long-term, but so is adoption and extension practices leading to adoption. And producers aren't all the same. So we have different production systems, different risk tolerances, different abilities to implement systems. It's not enough just to have information available, because only 2.5% of a population will adopt something based on scientific information alone.
So every year, annual farmers in Alberta and Western Canada have nutrients, water, and land resources stolen right out from under them. And the culprit of this theft is wild oats, resistant wild oats specifically. A pest that was once managed by many different herbicide options has, over the past 20 years, developed resistance to nearly all the different herbicide groups that were used for control. Control for wild oats has become more complex and more expensive.
Western Canadian farmers, Alberta farmers, and around the world supplying a quality product, a consistent product. But for the producers in the room, we all know how difficult that is to achieve. We have a variety of factors that influence that. So do I need better breeding? Do I need better crop protection, better fertilization? Those are the areas that as a producer I have questions for.
I want to look at what we can do cross-commodity to accelerate the sustainability of our production systems today and in the future. Let's say we have a farmer with 10,000 acres, and you know what? 5,000 acres of Roundup Ready canola, 5,000 acres of CWRS wheat, very specialized, very efficient in that system. If you ask that farmer to switch to 4,000 acres of Roundup Ready canola, 4,000 acres CWRS wheat, add in 1,000 acres of peas and 1,000 acres of forage, that's going to create requirements for different seed lots, different herbicide programs, different agronomic knowledge, different equipment, different marketing strategies, and all of this are those barriers that I want us to talk about.
Technology isn't just something to do with computer tech. Technology is also some different processes. And getting over that expense to the innovators, and in one of the questions we had this morning, someone said about we got to identify the innovators, and we do, but the trouble is innovators go broke, and innovators can't keep innovating all the time, and that's why we don't get the adoption. So, you know, we need to figure out a way to bring the innovators in. The previous presenter actually was saying, how do we bring more crop diversity and forages into a system? Well, some pieces of tech like fenceless grazing or smart grazing are some of those solutions, and it's going to take some effort and some innovators to get on board, but that's how we improve.
I was asked to talk what might be the impact of not using fertilizer, and I'd like to take you back to the mid-90s where Dr. Borlaug introduced the Green Revolution, and as a result a lot of the undeveloped countries all of a sudden could produce their food because we brought in fertilizer into the picture, and now we want to throw it out. In Western Canada, and if you look at the 2020 report from the International Plant Nutrition Institute, now down by plant, the Fertilizer Institute, you will see that 52% of Alberta soils, 71 of Saskatchewan, and 58 of Manitoba soils have levels of phosphorus which are below the critical level.
In my opportunities to view the world, it is Canada that has the greatest opportunity to not only provide food and abundance and prosperity to our own country, but to the world, as well as energy transition. My perspective in what you're doing is trying to brainstorm. What's the next best idea? Where should we prioritize where our funding goes? What should we attract funding to? How do we solve the solutions that will make not just this generation better, but future generations better? My dad always had a saying that he always used: a dream is never just a dream. It's the desire to change the world around you. And in order to change the world around you, it requires a whole community to believe in how to make things a little bit better each and every day.
To refresh everyone's memory, the question that we were talking about was related to net zero by 2050. So what came out really loud and clear is the need to measure baseline, understand where we're starting with respect to carbon in soil and even emissions, or even the carbon footprint of agriculture. There also needs to be more work and projects on demonstration in a coordinated way. This can't be done in silos, and it can't be done without people talking to each other, demonstrating the adoption of certain practices and assessment of the cost benefit. There's not one single project here. There's just a suite of problems that we know we need to collectively work together to move towards a smaller carbon footprint for ag.
One of the big ones that came out was peer-to-peer learning. Right? If we want to increase that adoption rate, that peer-to-peer learning is so important. And to be able to integrate that with research is important. So how do we blend those two together? How do we get the producers and the researchers together? We also talked about finding those early adopters and helping them get set up and structured and making that a demo farm so that other people could come out and look at that and learn from that. Again, that's peer-to-peer.
So again, we were talking about pest resistance and pest management in an integrated pest management system. And I think one of the best concepts that came out of that discussion was, and I think to no surprise, is the use of new technology and sensors to visualize and assess resistance in the field, and use that technology to kind of in situ in the field assess whether resistance is present, and then make a management decision in the field through that information.
Canada has a great reputation as being a high quality, consistent product, but how can we do better? How do we minimize the effects of things like weather? Is it obviously some of the solutions were around breeding, but breeding takes time. That's always an issue. So obviously the limitations are always the same. It's costs on all sides. What's the cost benefit analysis? That's always important to do. So if we can work on maybe producer level products that allow them to do the tests, maybe it's a protein level. We've talked in the past at different areas about falling numbers. Maybe it's some other option, even some things as simple as moisture, which really the technology we're using to test moisture hasn't changed in a long time. So maybe there's some better options to arm the producer with the information they need to get better value for their investment and give the buyer and therefore the consumer the product they need.
The refresher for what our group was tackling was how a whole farm cross-commodity approach could accelerate sustainability. Everything came back to the model at the end must make economic sense, and we came and ran through different things, creative co-ops, how the Hutterites run things, can we learn things from them? One of the other things was building trust in the system, and we talked about how potato growers buy trust to rotate their land. We talked about some of the policy incentives that might be necessary to push these things into happening, but we kind of brainstormed that at the end of the day, maybe what we need is if we could start from scratch and build dairy equally spaced across the province, put cattle on marginal land, that would be great, but we can't do that. So if we are to come up with a research question, can we build models that are regionalized, that look at economic thresholds that producers require to where it makes economic sense?
So ours was on adopting of technology at the barriers to adopt technology at the farm producer level. And specifically, we end up talking quite a bit about smart grazing, smart collars, fenceless grazing. Some of the things that came out of this that I think are quite important is, the innovations should be more open source and not quite so proprietary all the time. We have to pay a certain subscription or a certain item to do a specific task, and the costs just get skyrocketing too high. More systems need to work together.
Our initiative, driving soil health through a multi-pronged approach. The scope focused on the outcomes is the table, expanding rotations, including pulses, zero tillage, doing some research on the development and evaluation of new products. We saw a lot of challenges producers facing with food dust on the marketplace and stuff, so it's important that in order to move forward that we support and look at the development and evaluation of these products. New innovative technology such as foliar products that can be applied to canola, others in terms of to increase nitrogen fixation on that. Doing research on biostimulants, ensuring that there's sound science and guidance for Alberta producers. Key element of the how is to bring in some of what we'll call, say, the skeptics or critics to the table as part of, and having a really strong advisory committee is what our group came up with.
Well, we just had a wonderful RDAR Round-Up #1. And what an amazing venue here at Spruce Meadows to showcase the work that RDAR does and to bring together researchers and folks all the way from those that produce the crops in the field to the researchers that try and solve problems to the educational institutions that do also research and knowledge transfer. I've had a number of people come up and say, David, the conversation and the networking is perhaps the strongest part of the day. Your topic was bang on, given the energy and food inflation and crisis that we're facing. It was a huge success.